Thank you, Owais. Thank you for the humble introduction. And thank you, NISAG team, for inviting me here to the program and to speak on this very important topic of the importance of waste segregation in circularity, which is very, very important to talk about today. As India works towards SBM 2.0, which is Swachh Bharat Mission 2.0, it is essential to understand that all the objectives that have been laid down by the government of India will only be accomplished when we start segregating the waste. Segregating the waste also forms the basis of circularity. Unless we are able to recover the material properly from the waste that we produce today, will not be able to achieve a real circular economy. Thank you again, everyone, for inviting. And I would also want you to refer to my book, where I talk about several sectors, and our journal, which talks in depth about how circularity can be reached in several sectors. With that, Owais, can I share my screen? I don't think I can actually.
Yeah,
can
sure.
you please?
Yeah, now you can.
Sure, thank you. Is my screen visible, Owais?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone, once again. And I represent the circular economy. And I understand from the introduction that Professor Shruti was there to talk about circularity as a whole, as why circular economy or closing the loops is essential. I would then like to kind of steer directly to the economies and why economies need to circularize. We shall start with this here. And I think this will help us understand also and correlate from the previous webinar that you people have been attending about what is simplistic view of development at the moment. So if we look at this figure, we see that the World Bank produced this in 2011, and we see that on the bottom left, we see countries, economies that are emerging and the least developed countries, whereas on the right side, we see the economies that are developed economies. And if we see, we can see a starking difference between the GDP per capita. So US has the highest GDP per capita, whereas countries like Ethiopia, Nigeria, and Bangladesh, they see very poor GDP per capita. India, China, you can see, are emerging economies, and these economies are fast growing economies as well, are catching up very fast on this development. If we tend to use the same statistics vis-a-vis the resource consumption in these countries, we will see a straight line kind of a graph. And again, this graph was developed by the International Resource Panel of UNEP in 2011. We see that as the GDP per capita increases, the resource consumption also increases. That means there is a straight relation between a direct relation between the GDP and the resource consumption. So the less GDP of a country, the lesser the resource consumption. More the GDP of a country, more the resource consumption. So why are we talking about this? This basically shows that while the population growth in the emerging economies is increasing, the actual numbers of population is increasing, though the population rate is decreasing. India and China being two countries where the population growth rate has reduced, but still the actual number of the birth is very high. And this number is still going to increase till 2100. And we expect the global population to be 10.9 billion in 2100. So what is the relation between the population growth and all? So here, this diagram shows you a direct correlation between the global resource consumption as well as the population growth. what we see is from the time when the Industrial Revolution began, the resource consumption increased. The GDP also increased, as well as the tons per year of consumption in terms of tons per year also did increase. So with that increase, we can see that as the GDP is increasing, the population numbers are increasing, the global resource usage is also increasing, and we can see a curved graph, which is again, with the numbers is increasing till 2100. So while the resource consumption is increasing, is it a problem? Why do we consider it as a problem? Is because of the view of the economies at the moment. At the moment, we extract, we produce, we distribute through global supply chains, we consume the product, and then we dispose of the product, which has led to a kind of a linear consumption patterns in the economies of take, make, waste. As it is very often called as linear economy, we are using the infinite, we're using the resources from the earth, and we also are assuming that earth has a regenerative capacity, which will kind of regenerate the waste that we are producing. However, there are two big problems to this. The one problem is that Earth does not have an infinite regenerative capacity. And the other problem is that the resources are also not infinite, they are finally finite. And we have to consider that while we use these resources beyond the regenerative capacity of Earth, it has led to crossing the planetary boundaries that we have been doing constantly. And while we are crossing the planetary boundaries, it is leading to several catastrophic effects or impacts. So we see ocean acidification. We're talking about the marine litter, which is an increased problem today, not only for the human species, but also for the marine species, flora and fauna, both, by the way. We also see the ozone layer depleting because of the aerosols that we have been using for quite some time now. We talk about the climate change, which is a very, very important topic today. We talk about the global warming, the biodiversity loss that we are talking about. We are even talking about changing of the land system. So a lot of agricultural land has been put to industrial or residential usage, and that has led to the biodiversity loss, as well as the other, the imbalance in the ecosystem with the both land, air, and water. And so these boundaries we have been crossing, and that has led to a kind of a devastating effect of the linear economies. So what is the solution? As OS told, that Shruti also did mention about it, Professor Shruti, that the solution is circular economy. So what is the circular economy, and how do we decouple this resource consumption that we have been talking about from the economic growth? So what we see is that while we talk about circularity, we need to completely decouple the resource consumption to the GDP. And how this can be done, it is not a one-shoe-fit-all kind of a scenario, because there are different kind of economies who are growing at a different rate and have different GDPs. So there is a formula that has been developed for three different kind of economies. We're talking about the emerging economies, we are talking about the least developed economies, and we're talking about the developed economies. So what it says is there needs to be a decoupling, definitely, but will that decoupling be a relative decoupling or the absolute decoupling is something that we need to see between the economic activity as well as the resource use. So the formulas that I was referring to you are these three formulas, which talks about the least developed, the emerging, and the developed economies. So when I talk about this, I start with the developing economies first. So you can see on the bottom left, there is a diagram, there is a box which says developed economies. So developed economies, they have high GDP. So while they maintain their GDP for the economic activity that they're doing, they must very strongly decrease their resource consumption. So we call it as decoupling, which is an absolute strong decoupling of economic activity to the resource usage. So while they can continue to have the same economic activity, the resource consumption has to be totally, absolutely, strongly reduced. And that is strong absolute decoupling. Now I come to countries like emerging economies like India, China, where the economic activity is increasing. So, which is leading to increase in the GDP of income of people. And thus we are also seeing an increase in the consumption. But what we say is, we haven't reached a very high level, but we need to still reduce our resource consumption slightly. So while the economic activity can continue to increase, there should be a slight decrease in the resource consumption, and that we call as mild absolute decoupling. So both ways, the economic activity increases, but the resource consumption decreases, and that is why we are calling it a mild decoupling. Whereas if we talk about least developed countries like the Ethiopia, where there is the GDPs are very low, they need to very strongly increase the economic activity so that the people in the country could actually uh, uh, maintain a standard of living. At least they would get the basic necessities in life. So they need to increase the GDP. And because these people are so poor that they don't even have the basic necessities to survive, there could be a mild increase in the resource usage. So as you can see, and this, when we talk about this, we talk about still increase in resource use because we see these people do not have enough. And that is why this one is called a relative decoupling. So as you can see that we are talking about three different economies and three different ways of tackling the situation of consumption versus GDP. It is very important that each economy follows the kind of decoupling that better suits to their requirement. When I talk about circularity and why we are talking about circularity with the waste management is because today what is happening is we have this economy. The green circle in the upper diagram represents the economy. The orange arrow shows the material flow. And what we see is that the material we extract the material, we mine them, and that material enters the economy in the form of product or a material, and it outflows the economy because we are simply throwing it away. So after the usage of the material or a product, uh, its usage becomes a big fat zero, and that is why it is thrown out. Either it is thrown out in landfills or it enters any other let's say oceans or something, but they go out of economy and they're out of circulation. And that is why the economy currently is looking at a lot of new virgin stock that we keep extracting. Whereas circularity suggests that what we call waste and we throw as waste after the usage should be returned back into the economy and should be reused as much as possible. And that is why in the next diagram, in the second diagram on the right hand side below, you see the orange arrow being circulated within the green circle. That means the resource or the materials are flowing within the economy, which represents a circular economy in the true sense. While we talk about circularity, you can see this diagram, which has a thinner material flow. So the orange line is thinned here, which was thick in the previous diagram. This represents that the material consumption that we are doing needs to be decreased. So while we are consuming very high at a very high rate currently, we need to reduce our consumption and reduce it to a level which is equal to the regenerative capacity of the earth, is what this diagram also tries to say. We are very, very well acquired with the butterfly diagram, which was proposed by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. On the left-hand side in this diagram, we see the biological cycles, and the right-hand side, we see the technical cycles. All in green shows you the biological material that are produced or run within the economies. They could be returned back to the economy either through any kind of extraction or kind of cascading model, or can be used again as a biochemical feedstock, or farming, or through farming and collection could be returned back to the utilization. Whereas the technical material, which is extracted and mined from the earth, are produced into different kind of products and services and is provided to the consumer, to the user, and they are thrown out currently. But what it suggests is different blue loops that you see here. Uh, Maintenance is the shortest and the smallest loop. Then is the reuse and redistribute. Then is the refurbish and remanufacture. And last is the recycle. So what it shows is that while we use the products, we should also look at maintaining, reusing and redistributing, refurbishing and remanufacturing the products before we get into recycling, which is a very energy intensive and involves a lot of logistics. Before that, we should look at models at a decentralized model so that there is minimum leakage and there is minimum waste going to the waste that is generated. So the crux of this diagram is that the shorter the loops, the better it is. Similarly, on the left-hand side, you can see there are several cascades that we are using, which represents that the materials are consumed again and again at the local level, at a local decentralized level. And that is what leads to more of a circular economy. Again, as you can see in the center, we see the energy recovery and landfill. So energy recovery and landfill remains the two last options in a circular economy. And we look at putting the waste in the landfill as the last substitute if there is no other solution. So right now, a lot of research and innovation needs to be done to find out what can be done with the waste streams that are generated currently in a way that the value of the material is saved as much as possible. So these are two very, very clear, distinct discussions between the linear differentiation between the linear and circular economy. Linear economy, as I discussed with you, is the take, make, waste model, whereas in the circular economy, we talk about make, use, and reuse in the best possible manner. We see a lot of pollution, negative externalities in the linear economy, whereas in the circular economy, we use more of renewable sources, and thus it is more greener and balanced. When I talk about this, I would like to superimpose the same thing with what needs to be done to achieve circular economy. So we need to revive the age-old practices that we have in our countries, in our culture. We need to strengthen our informal sector. India has a huge potential of largely informal sector, which works on refurbishing, remanufacturing, and reselling the products. That sector is our backbone. We need to strengthen that sector further so that the products that we work on could be worked on in more sophisticated and standardized manner. We need to introduce new skill sets for managing these streams, and this will lead to creation of new business models. A lot of R&D and entrepreneurship and innovation is required to be put into this sector so that more and more similar models could come up. When we talk about waste particularly, we see that the municipal solid waste that India generates is around 55 to 65 million metric tons, and this data comes from CPCB. Plastic is approximately 5 to 6% of this total waste that is generated in our country. Goa, which is the richest state, produces the maximum waste, which is 60 grams per capita per day. Delhi, which is the capital city, produces only 37 as compared to Goa, much lesser than Goa, but it is still high, whereas the national average is hardly 8 grams per day per capita. So what we also see is that if we look at the starking difference between national average and Delhi, that shows that the capital city is producing much more waste as compared to the national average. Goa, on the other hand, is producing the maximum waste and much more higher than the national average. So when we talk about managing the waste, we need to understand there are two types of waste, which is a pre-consumer and post-consumer waste. There are statistics which are available on the pre and post-consumer waste in India. all stakeholders in the waste management sector, they need to be involved in policy making, in dialogues. They should be involved to understand. And I'm sure there are many models that come to light when we have a multi-stakeholder consultation. Rethinking new business delivery models is very important because this helps us to see how the waste streams that we have currently, how are they being managed, and elimination of the problematic waste. India banned this single-use plastic recently. We are looking at new models, new substitutes of the single-use plastic. So these are the kind of thing, and how to get rid of the single-use plastic. This will not happen unless we have the right substitute to the SUP. And that is where the innovation plays an extremely important role. And we need to redesign and manage the waste stream that we are producing. When I talk about the waste stream, I would also like to mention that the waste streams need to be clear, need to be unsoiled, to kind of work on them. A lot of time, the major issue that we find at the ULB level is that the waste stream is not clean enough to work on it. So they find it a lot of problem. And that is where the waste segregation at source plays an extremely important role. Digitalization again is a very important thing. What is happening to the product that the industry is producing? They need to kind of look at where it is being sourced from, where is it being produced, and what happens to it after the end of it end of its life cycle. It can happen through different kind of technologies like AI and ML, which is available today. The idea is to track the entire supply chain of a product, so we know what happens to the product right from its raw material stage, and then we kind of correlate it to build a kind of a data analysis to analyze the data to see how the product flows from starting to end, and what are the possible solutions that we can use at the end of the life cycle. This data through technology also enables us to see what is the utilization rate of that product, and can that product also be reused before it could be sent for recycling. So this is very important at the moment, and I think digitalization plays a crucial role to enable circular economy. Another area which I want to discuss today is about the supply chain. We saw during the COVID crisis, and now because of the ongoing Russian-Ukraine war, the entire supply chains have been disrupted. And because of this, we saw that there is inflation. There have been a lot of raw materials which are not there available. The local rates, the retail prices have shot up. The global, we are actually on the horizon of a global recession. But all this could have been managed if we were able to design circularity in our economies, which is by understanding how we are utilizing the products and supporting it with the models that would help to circularize the materials within the area, this decentralized at the local level. So I believe when India gave the clarion of global to local and support for the local artisans is something which is very relevant to the supply chain, because then you build up you strengthen your place to become more suitable for the local people at your own level. And that is perhaps why the economies that have been working more on the decentralized models and not depending upon the global supply chains have been more resilient in these crises. Another very important thing to bring in circularity is to talk about the material. The clearer, the easier the material flow and the material, the less complex the material, it is easy to abstract. So when the waste is of, let's say, when I talk to the textile industry, the more complex the textile is, the fiber is, the difficult it is to reuse it. But more simplistic or mono materials that are used in the textile industry, the better it is for reusing or maybe for the second life of the fiber. So when we think about how complex the material should be, I think they should be less complex. We should be looking at more of reusing the product, as the cloth utilization rate also we know is decreasing very drastically because of the fast fashion. We know that the consumptions are increasing and still going on increasing, but we need to find out innovative ways of reusing it, and also less of it going to the landfills is extremely important at the moment. I compare in this slide, it is important also to discuss about if we carry out our business as usual, or we kind of increase the technology and use more digitalization in the entire process. So according to a FICCI Accenture report, which was published in 2018, if India continues to do business as usual in the linear model, our GDP of $697 billion is at risk. Whereas if we involve more circular business models and we include technology, the GDP at risk is reduced to $382 billion, which is comparatively very low. That shows that India needs to kind of look at. Then I also compare a couple of other things for your understanding as to why circularity is important and how the current scenario versus the circular scenario could have an impact. This study was done in 2016 by Ellen MacArthur Foundation on 3 sectors: mobility, food, and cities. And in all 3 sectors, what they say is that if we were to compare the current linear scenario to the probable circular scenario that India can look at by 2030 and by 2050, the total cash out costs in all the 3 sectors were very much drastically. Cash outs was reducing by 14 and 40% respectively by 2050 and 2030. If we look at circular perspective further, I mean, this slide shows a further kind of elaboration on the similar area. It shows on the greenhouse gas emissions that will reduce, consumption of virgin stock material will reduce, the ground land usage for commercial and residential usage will also kind of deburdened, and water usage also can be comparatively controlled. I talk about 6 sectors in my book. This book is available on Amazon, and today is also used as a reference book in all the higher education institutes talking about circular economy. This is available, and I'll be very happy if you would like to read this book and give your views or write a review on Amazon. We also have 4 courses. We also have launched 4 certified courses on circular economy. These are basic courses to advanced courses to also the management business models that come out of circularity. All these courses are available on our website, ic-ce.com, and you can definitely go to our website, as you can see the link here. And I'm here to answer your queries, if any, on the subject. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such an insightful session. You talked about almost everything. You talked about how different economies, be it the developing, underdeveloped, or the least economies, need to tackle the problem of linear economy. Then you talked about the different strategical points that need to be considered while talking about this issue. And then you also gave us the comparison of how the useful, the positive and the negative impacts one can have, the economy can have with respect to the shift from linear to circular economy. So thank you so much for such a wonderful, insightful session. And if anyone has any question, then you may please mute yourself and you can ask, or you can also, write your question in the chat box. I can take that up. So if anybody has any question, please go ahead.
I have a question, if I may.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, my question is to ma'am. So, ma'am, I think you talked about the lower downing of the $1 billion value to almost half, right? If we move towards the technology front rather than the linear fashion in which we are moving. So, do you think it is owned to I think, okay, my question is like, what do you think? We should do that or not? I'll tell you why. Because I think there is a global carbon space which is not being utilized by India to the fullest, but I think it is being overutilized by other developed countries. So we are a developing nation. Do you think we should reutilize our global carbon space and then start thinking about it? Or how we should cope up with it? Because it is all about GDP also at the end, right?
Yes, so India is an emerging economy. Thank you for that question, Sahil. Very well put, and maybe when you talk about we should look at the carbon space earlier or later, I think India is already looking into the carbon space, and a lot of companies are also looking these strategies on how they could decarbonize. You must understand that circularity. While we talk about how do we change the economy to go to be more circular, and decarbonization that goes hand in hand. Uh, a lot of companies, while they think about circularity, are also thinking about how they should look at uh, becoming net zero. India has already committed to become net zero by 2017. If we are looking at starting it today. Yes, I believe a lot of you're right in the sense that a lot of developed countries are looking at the carbon space more than India. It is still at a very, very nascent stage. India needs to look at and has a huge potential to look at the carbon sink as well. Uh, but at the same time, I think we are already looking into it, and these are parallel things that are going to happen. It should not be, we should not wait for one and then start the other. I think both of them put together are going to make a substantial change in the transition, in the green transition that the India is looking at.
Sure. Thank you so much for your answer. I think it is just a conflict between going green altogether or becoming a developed nation first. And I think that's a fair point also sometimes, right?
So, Sahil, being in the policy making circle, I know that India is looking at both together. They are not looking at cutting down the GDP at the moment. So, they're looking at industrial development. India is looking at manufacturing, hugely at the manufacturing hub. But while they're looking at it, they are also looking at the green transition. And I think that is going to be the strength of India. While India, if you read any of the policies that today are coming out, I think we are looking at the transition being green, and that is why if you hear the policymakers, you would understand that they are looking at manufacturing, and they've committed that while India grows its manufacturing sector, they will also be looking at the green transition parallelly, and the manufacturing will not happen uh, uh, at the loss of the transition in green strategy that India is looking at. So I think and times and again, our minister for the industry has committed that India will be the first nation to become the green manufacturing hub. So I think these are important points that India is looking at and is making a transition towards that.
Sure. Thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who need to ask any question or any comment you guys need to, any inputs? Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you, Sahil, for your question. Thank you, ma'am, for answering it. And with that, I would now like to request our lead of communication, Miss Daisy Bhuyan, to
Hello.
kindly give a vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, Uwais. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah.
So, first of all, I'd like to thank Shalini ma'am for her willingness to share her time and expertise in the area of circular economy and waste management, which was critical to the success of today's event. Ma'am, please accept our sincere appreciation for your outstanding presentation. It was very interesting to hear your thoughts and knowledge on the theme. Thank you so much for your time and experiences and sharing them with us. And for the all the other participants who stayed till the end of the event, thank you so much. We are coming up with more such sessions, and we hope you keep on participating in the upcoming events. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.